For me, living big is being able to walk the talk. And it means having three freedoms specifically. I want financial freedom, I want time freedom, and I want health freedom. That's what I want in my life because I realize that those are the most valuable freedoms in play so that I could get the most out of my life.
Welcome back to the Time Freedom Podcast, where you can learn how to rethink your work and your money to create a life you love right now. Join us for insights to help you find meaningful freedom so you can choose how and when and with whom you work for as long as you want. Here are your hosts, me, Brian Harriott, and Kirby Dennison. Today on the podcast, we welcome Vickie Lanthier. She's a decorated Canadian military veteran, registered nurse, author, and the founder of High Agency Human, a movement focused on building resilience through practical preparedness. Her new book, High Agency Human, Navigate Adversity and Live Big, draws on her 14-year military career and her own reinventions, from IT consultant to nursing student to entrepreneur to author. She recently packed up and traveled to Albania for 2 months to live out her philosophy in real time. Welcome back, everybody, to the Time Freedom Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Vickie Lanthier. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. We have so much that overlaps, Brian. Let's go.
We definitely do. So we met through a workshop that we're both part of, and we've kind of been following each other's work and helping each other out along the way. And yeah, I think you have a really cool story to tell about how you're living time freedom. And that is one of the main reasons that I definitely wanted to talk to you, because I feel that there are not enough role models kind of telling their story. And so people that are even considering this don't even know where to look. And so I think that you'll have a really interesting take that will be really helpful to the listeners. Before we start and get into the good stuff, we ask a question of our guests that is a little unique, and that is, what do few people know about you? So, Vickie, what do few people know about you?
I am going to go with what I find the hardest for me to say. And that is, a long time ago, when I was in the military, I got an award from Princess Anne, which is
Wow.
a big deal and was fun. But the best part about it was telling my grandmother and my mother that they would get to come and meet and talk to her. And I am telling you, Brian, that's the highlight of my whole career. The award is beautiful. It's pretty. It's in a Rubbermaid somewhere. It's not even on my wall. All I remember was calling my grandmother and her telling me that she told all her church friends like the next day.
Oh, that is so great. That is so great. I love that. I love that. And you have no idea where it is right now?
I do. It's in the Rubbermaid that never gets opened. You know, the stuff that you're supposed to keep, and it is important, but I don't need those things on my wall.
Well, that's a really good one. And we were talking ahead of when we pressed record, how sometimes our guests, what few people know, trigger ideas for us. Well, I have nothing like that that I can think of.
Me neither.
I think it's because it's kind of so cool that, yeah, that doesn't exist for me. So I'm going to take it a very different route. But when I was like 25, I think it was, like, I was an adult, my back looked weird to me. So I went to see, I don't know, it was just a primary care physician to get an x-ray, and this was in New Orleans, and things move really slow in New Orleans. And I was like waiting in the room after my x-ray. And I kind of peeked out and I saw somebody's x-ray up there. I'm like, oh God, I'm glad I'm not that guy. And lo and behold, it was mine. And I found out when I was 25 years old that I had this wicked scoliosis in my back. And the doctor kept saying, how did your childhood physician not see this? And I'm like, well, I lived in a small town and went to a small town doctor. And fortunately, not until just recently has it really started impacting my life. But like, that was like the weirdest shock. And many people don't know that about me because you're just looking at my head, all the time when we're in these Zoom and Riverside shots. So that's my story this week.
It's a good story.
Yeah, it was weird. How about you, Kirby?
Well, mine's going to go completely another direction because I've got nothing. I don't really have that much interesting bone stories, I guess. And I definitely haven't met a princess. So I'll go with the bottom straw of Vickie. We were also down to, like, this is our, I don't even know, episode this season, and we're running out of things to say. So I'm gonna go with I have watched literally probably almost every episode of My 600-Pound Life.
That how many are there? Is that like
There's a lot. There's
there's a lot.
I don't know, over 8 seasons probably.
I think your next goal should be to watch every Survivor.
Oh, that would probably be much more interesting. I started it was a I started on a not so healthy side of it because I was on maternity leave and I was like, if I'm gonna be home all day, like I have to figure out something I'm not gonna just binge eat. So that's how I curbed from eating
Yeah.
my whole life.
Kirby.
You always
It was rough.
you have to do something that makes you feel better about yourself.
Yeah. No. However, I will say, like, the transformation that they go through because that doctor in Texas is so intense, like, the psychology and all of it that they have to go through is, like, literally bringing on a new identity. And so it's like I got way into the science part of it more so than just, like, losing weight, but
It's probably
having
why
the
it's
help.
so interesting to watch. All right, well, let's jump into it. So, Vickie, what we'd like to do is if you could just give us some high level personal or professional demographics to kind of place yourself with our listeners.
Oh, let me think. I didn't know what to do in high school. I wasn't the most studious kid around. I'm pretty sure I skirted through high school and just barely passed it. So then the next sentence makes sense where you don't know what to do. You don't know if you're going to, grad school or like university or anything else. So I joined the military at 18 and I stayed at defense, both in the military and then as a contractor for 26 years. I started my own hiking resource business in 2012, which has donated over 27,000 since 2020 to charity, mental health, and conservation, which I'm really proud of. And I became a registered nurse at 46.
I just find it's so interesting, like the varied nature of the things that you've done is pretty awesome. So before we get into some of the topics in your book that are very applicable to listeners who are interested in time freedom, I just want to hear a little bit more about your story. And I think of life, actually writing the book helped me realize that life isn't like this just gradual trajectory or, year after year after year, but there's like these inflection points in your life. And in reading about you and reading your book, I definitely got those from you. So I was wondering if you could share some of those with me. I think the first one was when you were 21 years old, right, in the military.
Yeah, it is. It's funny you're talking about inflection points. I think the biggest inflection points for me are not the most negative moments, but they're the most challenging that require a response and how that response turned into growth and opportunities. But they are always the most challenging that require me to move and take an
Hmm.
action. And I think that's why I started writing about what I write about, because I love those hard times so much. When I was a kid, I was at a camp and I think I was 18 at this point, and I witnessed a plane crash onto the camp. So it was my first time with like a real emergency, and it was just a small plane, Cessna, with a few people in it. And the few adults that we had on camp responded to the crash, and the rest of us went to the bunkhouses and got the kids out on the cement pad and started, making sure that everybody was safe and accounted for. So that was the first one at 18. And then when I was 20, I had an accident. I joined the military by that time. And I had an accident with a tank where my face got smashed in this tank accident. And then at 21, I went on my first deployment, and that's when I experienced my first mass casualty. So I think that lineup of events, really what I appreciate about those events is that they grew in severity, I guess. So there was time to have one event that you're not really involved in, one that happens to you, and then one where other people are at stake. And the in-between moments really allowed me to digest and take things in.
That's interesting how you say it was gradual. I worked in a hospital setting for a while, and my partner in crime was a nurse, and we would kind of, we traveled around all over the place, and things would happen, because you're in a hospital, like
Of
somebody
course.
would whatever, and she would just go to it, and I would freeze, and I I would be no help, I feel like. But then someone said, "Oh, no, in a certain situation, you would probably come around and help." And I like to think that, But that's why I'm so fascinated by these points in your life and how you've then turned that into the book. I don't know what you think, like based on your expertise, like would I actually come around? Like if something really important was needed?
I I think if we had the same set of experiences, the chances are
Yeah.
pretty likely. Training, right? Like your partner is a
Yeah.
nurse, so she's used to certain things and she had
Yeah.
gradual exposure. I would hope
Mhm.
anyways. And the same with being in the military. So it's really having, you train for it, you practice it, you mentally rehearse it, and then all of a sudden something happens. You could lean on what you've already walked through, and then you just have to worry about the aftermath.
Mhm.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. So I know from my personal experience writing the book, and I'm guessing from yours, like your life experiences kind of compound into this concept. So that's why I want to spend some time kind of on these formative things. I think another item that I actually read about for the first time in Mike Michalowicz's book, The Money Habit, was this experience that you had. I now realize was not that long ago in 2023, where can you tell us about that a little bit? Because I feel like that's also very much impacting how you view the world.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's always like the emergency moments. And when I did go to nursing school, I experienced burnout. And then you get to this career near the end at 26 years with defense. And I was a consultant, an IT consultant at defense for a while. And the ebbs and flows with politics and government, one year
Mhm.
they have a lot of employees and the other year they have a lot of consultants, and it depends how they want to balance their budget. And I just remember on a Thursday, I woke up in that morning and I started work. And then the contract company actually called me and said, "Hey, when are you going to sign out so we could wrap this up?" And I said, "What?" So the
How
managers
long
didn't even notify me.
was your contract like that you thought you had?
It would have just been reoccurring. So
Continuous. Wow.
yeah, a lot of those contracts go on for,
Um,
they're either on a year base or a few months, but they
Hmm.
are always reoccurring. So then I had to call my manager and confirm that my contract was cut. And I had about an hour to transfer everything over, all the data over. And the next morning, I went back to defense and handed in my laptop, my ID pass, and full access. And that was it. It was from a Thursday to a Friday morning. So I went from a very healthy 6-figure job with a house and a lot of stuff in that house that I probably shouldn't have bought. And the next day, absolutely no job.
And this is where I'm fascinated because like I try to think about what I would do, but then I also think about like what most people would do. And then I read about what you did. It's very different. So what ended up happening then for you?
Well, I've kind of been in this place before. So I was also holding a lot of debt. I had 80K in debt, and then there's the house, and then there's no job. I go through these cycles, Brian, of feast and famine financially. And I know that this is my cycle, but I also know that every time I'm in a famine cycle, I could get out of it, and I could get out of it pretty quickly. So I always believed that I was capable. But what I'm working on now is just not getting into that cycle again. Just
Mhm,
FYI, and we could
mhm.
get to that later. So what happened was a moment of familiarity. So I've been in this cycle to various degrees before, and I thought, okay, what are you going to do about it?
mhm.
And it took me, like, that was a Friday, and I'm sure by the next week I had everything sorted. So I immediately did the emergency stuff. Like, while I'm trying to figure out what my next move is, how can I generate income? And that's a pretty easy answer when you have a house and stuff. Like, you have a house that you could rent a room out. I
Mhm.
chose to babysit dogs, which is very lucrative during the week. Doesn't require a lot of my attention. I mean, I love dogs and they require my attention, but it's easy to
Yeah.
do while you're trying to figure out your next move. And then I sold all the extra stuff. That was an easy 6 grand plus
Mhm,
within a week.
mhm,
Great. Then I just sat and looked at the house and I said, well, the house has got to go because I need more time for my next move. And while I know that I need to be in a reduced state while I figure this out, and I think when I don't have an income, I don't really have any right as a single person. I have no dependents to worry about or anything like that.
mhm,
I didn't feel like I had the right to hold on to this house and the weight of the house on me while I didn't have the financial means. I said, nope, I'm not doing that. And I put it in the market. It sold within 10 days. And then I just reduced my stuff even more. I sold nearly everything I owned. And I moved into a very affordable apartment with my very minimalist stuff and the one
Nice.
Rubbermaid container that has the Princess Anne flag in it. And it bought me a lot of time, Brian, to pivot, and it bought me a lot of freedom. I knew that I was already working on this book. I knew that I was sitting on a nursing license.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I had healthy investments, which was part of our buffer, which you also talk about in your book. So I knew that I have friends and family to lean on. If I didn't have enough, I could go live with friends or family while I recouped. That would be fine. It doesn't matter. You do what you have to do. So I decided to do all of that. And before I moved anything too far ahead, I decided to go travel to the Arctic first. And then I came home and took my nursing license and got a job.
It's just a wonderful different perspective. I think just at least in the United States, I can't speak for Canada because I'm not familiar, but like people just feel like you need to keep that level of consumption going. And then that's how the debt starts to pile up. And so you're basically kind of, you're going with the cycle, and kind of ebbing and flowing your lifestyle with what you have coming in. Which allows you not to get behind. That's kind of how I think of it. I don't know if that's how you think of it.
I think of it as like the fallacies of keeping up with these illusions
Mm-hmm.
is the most ludicrous waste of our lives that we could possibly partake in.
Yeah.
Like why would you max out the biggest house that you can? Why would you buy all these? And there's nothing wrong with doing any of that if you could
Mm-hmm.
afford it. And you already
Right.
have your buffers in place. But no, I don't think it's worth it. And I think you have
So
to kill your ego a little bit too. Like
yeah.
it's humbling to say maybe as a 40-some-year-old, I need to move in with a family member for 6 months or a year. But the other side of the fence is we should be nurturing those relationships so that we can lean on each other when we need to. And you're lucky to have those relationships.
Yeah, and I also my mind went to, oh, then you can kind of spend time with people you otherwise wouldn't have seen. And I'm sure they wouldn't love it if they had someone to make dinner a few nights a week. That's actually a kind of a wonderful experience.
And what about the quality time that we just don't get with our friends and family anymore
Right.
because we're so individualistic?
Yep. Yeah. So what I love about your story too is your story of time freedom is one that's not, because, you're bringing in $2 million a year or something like that. There's the lifestyle, this way of living is available kind of across different income ranges. So where kind of are you, before we get into the concepts of your book, which I'm excited to do that, where kind of are you now in the story? Yeah, I mean, since that event in 2023, and I know that you're calling from Albania, which I have a lot of questions about too.
I am. So where I am. So that was my gorgeous opportunity to pivot and I wasn't going to waste it. There was contract offers that came back after that. And I thought, no, I'm not going back to full-time work and a healthy 6 figures. Not that I'm snubbing my nose at a healthy 6 figures. I'm snubbing my nose at the time and effort and energy it took from me to get those six figures. So I decided with the nursing license, great, I'm going to nurse part-time. So I nurse about half the year, short contracts. And I don't even make a half of what I used to make in government. Maybe a third, maybe a quarter is what I make now. But I also have healthy investments from before that create dividends and everything else. So I can lean on those if I need to, but I don't need to that much. The exception is the book, because we could talk about the price it takes to bring a book into existence. But on my own, my living expenses are fine with working half the year. That's what I've reduced down to. And that means that I get to do things. So my life now is a nursing contract, my writing creative pursuits, a lot of family time, and traveling to wherever I'd like to travel and see.
How did you pick the Arctic and how long were you there? And how did you pick Albania?
Wow. I have to blame my friend Carolyn, who is a former diplomat and now a travel advisor. So
Oh,
Carolyn
cool.
Schmidt from Wander Ramble Rome, she is a beautiful human who's so experienced. And we were having coffee one day when I lost my job as I'm going through all this. And she was about to partake in some more travel. And I said, you know what, Carolyn, I think I'm done with travel. I don't know if I meant it. I think I was just feeling the stress of not having money all of a sudden. And I think I'm done with travel. The only places I really would like to go to is maybe the Faroe Islands and Svalbard. Like I've always wanted to go there. and she near spit out her coffee. It just so happens she booked an expedition cruise to Svalbard, was paying the single supplement, and couldn't get any of her friends to go with her. And my house sale didn't go through yet, but I had just enough that I could pay for this trip. And the timing was just right. And I was like, within 30 minutes, we decided, yes, we paid for the trip, and away we go. So we went on an expedition cruise, and we went to Scotland and Jan Mayen and Faroe Islands and Svalbard, and then back to Finland. And it was phenomenal, my friends.
Those are those moments that you have to just go with. Like, it just seems like it's working out. You're like, just let's keep going. Like, I don't want to pause for a moment because this is going to work.
And I wouldn't have been able to say yes if I didn't create that space in my life.
I've often thought of nursing as a great career to live flexibly because of the different types of arrangements that you can have. And there's a million ways that you can use your nursing license. And it seems like you found one that works really great. Can you tell us, just before we kind of dive into some topics within your book, kind of give us the overview of your book, who it's for, those sorts of things?
Yeah, of course. I wrote this book for two people. One, for those who can't seem to catch a break. And it seems to be one crisis after another, after another, after another. And they feel the weight of that, and they don't know how to get beyond it. They don't have any buffers. That concept for them isn't there. Those are my people. The other people are also my people. They're the ones who are well set up, but maybe they don't have time freedom, Brian. And they need to create more space in their lives so that they can live big the way that they want to.
And what's your subtitle? Because it kind of captures both of those, it seems like, right?
It is navigate adversity and live big.
Yep. So let's look at the first part first, if that's all right. I love the concept of buffers. I always come at it from like a financial buffer, but your view of buffers is much broader. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have 4 main buffers that I'd like people to focus on. One is financial, which is very important. And I look at financial a little differently. So one's financial, your health, your paperwork and plans, and your skills. Those are the 4 buffers in life that I feel create the most impact when life goes sideways.
So definitely financial. That one I get. The health, yes. That was the one people probably forget about. The skills, yes. Like the way I think of that is, if you go through some skill development thing earlier in your career and you're like, I never used it. You'll be surprised. Like, I've noticed, like, come 10 years later, you're relying on something that you learned, so long ago, because these skills compound and they are always with you, right? Are you a nurse in the military, or was that a
No.
complete switch for you?
It was a complete switch. I worked in communications my whole life. Yeah.
Oh, and IT.
Yeah. Hey, listen, when I started, it was still like semaphore and Morse code and radios. And then somehow we got to this IT business that I didn't like so much, but worked anyways.
I was just thinking like, because you could transition the nurse to this, to this, to this. But I still feel like, I'm sure that there's things that have kind of continued. Is there like a through line of skill or something that you have kind of through all of your different paths that you've taken? And if not, that's fine. I was just thinking like,
I think it's response to hard times.
Oh, yeah.
Leadership and management, decisive action, empathy, like off the top of my head.
I'm a big person on decisiveness too. And sometimes you meet, or you're in situations, usually in larger organizations, where like you just can't make a decision and it's so hard. So that's really cool about the buffers. I'd love to also ask you more about the ideas of living big and living differently. And the reason why specifically is that, this journey of writing the book has made me realize that I need to take bigger bets on myself, and I need to be comfortable with the fact that maybe I'm just going to not do that traditional 40-year corporate career, and I'm trying to convince people to do it. But really, all I'm kind of offering them is living different is a possibility, living big is a possibility. And if you get people in your life, your old life, your family members that are just, they don't seem to be going along with you on these ideas, it's not because they don't like it. It's because they're either jealous of it, or they're just not used to it and they're worried for you. Yeah. But that's all I say. Like, I really don't offer, here's how or why, or here's this approach to take. And I believe you get into that. And so I'd love to learn from you.
Don't tell anyone what their specific definition of living big should look like. But
Uh-huh.
I do strongly believe that you should create enough space so that you could do your own version of that. And when you were talking about your own life, Brian, which I think like I'm so in love with time freedom. I can't even tell you. I like read through it again today and I was like, this is so lovely
You are
because
too kind, and I did not pay you
I
to say that.
no, you didn't. It's completely free. Um, okay, so what I think that I need to do, I've always believed in leading by example. I don't always succeed, but I try. And I think that's part of our character, part of our integrity. Even when you want to do something, even when no one's looking, or you want to do something differently, if you could stick to leading by example and living with integrity, then you could never go wrong and the dividends pay later in life. So with this book, I'm taking the whole year to reapply the aspects and concepts of the book into my own life again. And I'm showing everybody on social media so that you could see how it benefits my life and the differences, the before and afters in my finances, in my health, in my plans and paperwork, and maybe when hard things come up, how that plans and paperwork came into play. Same with skills and same with developing a higher sense of agency. So I purposely have the whole year planned out. I have all the checks that I need to do. And we're going to run this as one big experiment as how far it could get us.
That's so cool.
I didn't even answer your question on what does living big mean.
No.
So sorry. So for me, living big is being able to walk the talk. And it means
Ah,
having 3 freedoms specifically. I want financial freedom, I want time freedom, and I want health freedom.
that's cool.
That's what I want in my life because I realize that those are the most valuable freedoms in play so that I could get the most out of my life, so that I could play with my nieces and nephews, although they're too old now, but I could take them on trips or something like that. And that I could do things for my mother, that I can pursue another degree if I want, or take 2 months to live in Albania at the beginning of every year like I am now.
How did you come up with your title? What is a high agency human to you? Because when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. But I never would have thought about using those words.
So, yeah, I had to sit down and think, what do I really want for people? What was the whole message? And I fought with that. Brian, I wrote this manuscript completely, start to finish, over 3 times before I really figured out how this book was going to be molded. I was like, what do I really want for people? And I want them to nurture high agency within themselves so that they could have the ownership and the capability of directing their lives. Great. And managing hard times and living through the good ones. So I actually was just troubleshooting names. You know how we all do? We write a million titles for our books.
Yeah.
And I just said, nope, that's not what I want for people. Nope, nope, nope. And I was at a table with my friend Mickey, who's an entrepreneurial wizard and advisor. And I disrupted her work by just looking up and saying, high agency human. And she looked back at me and said, that's it. And I was like, that's exactly what I want for people.
I love human too. I love the word
Mhm.
human in there because that's really what we all are at
Yeah.
the end of the day. When you take off all the other roles and things that we play, I think that's pretty cool. One of the chapters you have, chapter 8, called Switch Off Autopilot.
Yeah.
I have that right. Boy, this is me. Like, I fortunately have a spouse that helps me a lot because she asks the question, why are you doing that? Because I'm very good at taking a task and driving it through to completion, but I feel like sometimes I get in a rut where I'm just doing it and I'm not asking myself what the purpose behind it is. And literally she said, seems like you operate on autopilot. I'm like, so when I saw that title of that chapter, I'm like, yes, that's me. Have you ever operated on autopilot? Maybe, I don't think you are now. Have you ever operated on autopilot? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, but we all do to various degrees. We all operate on it. So the famous example is when you're driving somewhere, but you're able to have a full discussion and all of a sudden you've reached your
Sure.
destination, right? That's autopilot. Or when we trip over something and bump into someone and say sorry. We do it without thinking. Or when we get to a
In
party and we greet
Canada.
people in Canada. I say sorry a lot. I'm not going to lie. I will bump
other people bump into you and you say you're sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
110% all the time. And I get mocked for it like you wouldn't believe, rightfully.
You're too
Oh my.
nice. Yeah, I love it.
Well, no, not always, but we'll see. We do say sorry a lot. But anyways, chapter 8, switch off autopilot. When you're talking about autopilot, or it's like the opposite would just be consciousness, or thinking about your thinking and being aware of your thinking. Both those things are the same. If we bring it down to the nuts and bolts, it's just neurocircuitry. So let's bring it right back down to that understanding. And what are the components neurologically of change? There's 6 components in that. There's buy-in, stimulation, intervention, reflection, sleep, and repetition. So you've got to have, a person has to have, in order to, let me just back that up again. So think of bumping into someone and saying sorry. That's a very well reinforced neural pathway, and it operates subconsciously. How you automatically do your coffee in the morning. Maybe you're thinking about it a little more, but it's still a reinforced neural pathway. If you want to weaken a neural pathway or strengthen a neural pathway, then we talk about the components of change and these 6 elements. So buy-in, and you could use this with yourself. I have had conversations with neuroscientists. I interview Dr. Cook in the book, who's a neurosurgeon, a well-known one in Canada, as well as others, and some research there. But from everything I've gathered, whether it's stroke or PTSD or anxiety attacks or just the change we want to create in ourselves, these 6 components seem to be there from my understanding. So buy-in, you have to have either intense focus or a high emotion desire for change. There has to be buy-in first. That's almost like we say nobody changes until they hit rock bottom, because they have a visceral emotional reaction to it and they have no choice. So they're there. You have to stimulate neuroplasticity. So you have to stimulate one of the 4 neuromodulators to create neuroplasticity in your mind, so that your mind is primed for change. And you could do that through exercise, learning something new, novel experiences. Yes, if you're looking at other types of therapeutic treatments, you could talk about psychedelics and everything else. There's medical interventions as well. But the average person could do these other elements. Then there's intervention, which is key. You can't just put yourself in a neuroplastic state and then do nothing with it. Because if you do, you risk not being intentional with what you're reinforcing, and perhaps reinforcing a neural pathway that you don't want to reinforce. You have to be intentional with it. So that could be guided journaling, or maybe it's therapy. Then the one we seem to push aside, and I'll give the example of going to therapy or couples therapy. On the drive home, we seem to push aside reflection. We want to put on a podcast. We want to talk about it with our spouse. We want to just fill our minds back up. We're going to blast the music and get all our emotions out. We should give ourselves the opportunity after the intervention for reflection. Just allow that reinforcement. Then sleep, which people also don't think about, because that's when all the changes happen in the brain, and repetition.
I also have read about sleep as it relates to when, as kids are growing up, where at night is when the connections are made and some of the things are separated.
Same thing.
I mean,
that's when our brain, cleans up our body cleans different aspects of our body. Our mind does magical things. Neural pathways are created. They are weakened. They are strengthened. Quality sleep and consistent sleep, consistent bedtimes, they matter more than I think we give them credit for.
Do you ever have a thing that's not right in your head? For me, it's just a really kind of a dumb example, but I always mix up a sweater and a sweatshirt, right? Do you know those 2 things, right? Like a hooded sweat. I always say the wrong one. And I actually, after reading that, I thought I must have had a bad night's sleep the day that I was learning that connection, because I never have been able to ever since. It's the worst.
Yeah. Or when you grab your sweaters, you're not being there's no intervention for correcting that or weakening that neural pathway. I'm the same way, Brian. When I type great, when I write anything, every time I type great, it comes up as Greta. Every single time since I was a kid. Yeah. So we just all have these quirks.
I love those quirks.
These quirks are just reinforced neural pathways.
See, these are things that few people know about us that we're actually kind of coming back to at the end of the episode. Do you have any quirks, Kirby?
Oh, I have a lot of those. And this is just so fascinating for me too, because it falls in line exactly with all the NLP stuff that I do and like the human behaviors and all of that. So I can't wait I already pre-ordered your book.
Oh, thank
Spoiler
you.
alert. And I just like can't wait to read it and like get into it.
Can you tell us this is a question that our writing coach often asks, is what change do you want to see in the world because of your book, that your book would bring about?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Thinking big, living big.
I'd like to see us spend less time on draining, hustling, weighty, reactionary world that we live in or create for ourselves, and more time and space so that we could get the most out of life that we can. My
That's
biggest thing, Brian, is I don't want anyone to waste their lives. And I don't mean that flippantly, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I just mean that, like, looking at the three of us now, we're at our best. Like, these are our best years. We're relatively healthy. We have all different kinds of potential in front of us. These are good years. So what are we doing with those good years if we're the lucky ones that are still here?
I think that's so great. How can people get your book? How can they get in touch with you, Vickie?
I think the easiest way, because I don't have the easiest last name in the world, and my website is my full name, but the easiest way is to go to highagencyhuman.com. That'll have all the book information and then bring you to my personal website. And if you're interested in seeing how I'm doing with applying, walking the talk, taking my own medicine, people could follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. That's Vickie M. Lanthier for Instagram and LinkedIn, or High Agency Human on Instagram as well, both accounts.
And we'll put that in the episode notes so that it's easy and clickable through. Thank you, Vickie, so much for coming and sharing everything that you have with us and with our listeners. It was a true pleasure.
Thank you. I hope everyone just has, the life they want instead of the life others want, and keep going.
Oh, all right, Kirby, what a great conversation with Vickie. What stood out to you?
So what stood out to me was how she explained when she was going through the transition of like being laid off and how it really only took her a week like in that crisis mode. However, I loved how she described like having the weight of the debt and like the physical weight of the house, and how it was a no-brainer for her. Like she just was going to sell the house and live, within means and get rid of this stuff per se. And so many people are tied to the physical aspects of their life that most people wouldn't even think about that until it was like far too late. So I just loved that was like her number one go-to.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I also just found her perspective on life to be just so different from the traditional consumption, conventional path, corporate America situation, and even to the point of the type of book she wrote, which is, I would consider it as like a personal development book, but it's so different in that it combines two seemingly different things, like how to handle adversity and how to live big. But I think that both of those fit together in a way that only she could create. And I think that a lot of people are going to get help from it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you, everybody, very much for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Please like and subscribe and give us an honest review. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Hey, listeners of the podcast, I have a special deal for you. You can now pre-order my book, Time Freedom, if you go to the link timefreedombook.com. And my special is, normally, if you order 3 books, you can get the audiobook free immediately. If you put the promo code podcast, you can order 1 book at your favorite retailer, Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, wherever, and put your order number in the form, put the promo code podcast, and I'll immediately send you the audiobook for free right away. So you don't have to wait. Pre-order the hard copy book, get the audiobook free. Thank you so much for your support. timefreedombook.com.